Good morning, and I'm told by good news that it is actually morning instead of last night, my declaration of morning then. We welcome you to the Wednesday, November the 20th meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority. We invite you to stand and join us in repeating the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll begin with our safety first minute, and we have a guest to do this for us, Kent Milstein.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I want everyone to think for a minute about the last time they tripped or stumbled on something. Maybe you were walking up or down the stairs at work or at home. Maybe you just lost your balance while you were slipping on something that spilled on the floor. Maybe it was while you were walking on a curb or a break in the sidewalk and you just caught your toe, just causing you to stumble for a second. Maybe all that happened was you lost your balance for a second and it hurt your pride and you're a little embarrassed, or maybe you actually fell down and caused some type of injury. Slip, trips, and falls actually continue to be the #1 injury for us here at UTA. And so what do we do about that? What are some things that we can be aware of? Our poster this month is housekeeping, helping us keep safe. If we keep the areas around us clean when we're walking, especially in our shops or in our offices, maybe we can prevent that stumble from happening. Maybe we turn around and walk over something that wasn't there last time and we just happen to catch it if we keep that clean. Some of the other things that we can do are when you're coming up and down the stairs, grab that handrail. Make sure you got that 3 points of contact. Anyway, there's things that we can do to prevent slips, trips, and falls, and we just need to be aware of those things and keep the area around us clean. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Great message. We'll next move to our public comment section. Bob?
Yes, we do have one comment from Claudia Johnson.
Good morning, Claudia. Welcome.
At least it's morning.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me make my comments. I was up in Layton a week or so ago, and somebody gave me directions and said, "Oh, you just go down Gentile and get to the track station." As I went down, because I'm not familiar with Layton, other than you go here to go to such and that's it. As I went down the street, I kept looking for signs because they said, "Oh, just don't worry, you can see it." And I kept looking and looking and looking, and I couldn't see any signs that said track station or front runner station. So I don't know if it's just Layton or any of the other areas. You need to have some sign somewhere that says, "Hey, it's this way." I know most places you got it, but I'm sure that there's other communities. I was taking them down to the station to catch the front runner, and so that was my concern. And I don't know if other places are the same way. So the other thing that I wanted to comment on is the fact that happy anniversary. It's been a year since you guys have been on. And I appreciate the fact that the board, you have done a sincere understanding of UTA from my point of view and from questions that I have. And I appreciate the efforts that you have put forth and the questions that you asked to get people to look at things again and maybe to reevaluate. But I appreciate that, and I'm sorry there weren't more people last night, but I'm also sorry that there aren't more people that are involved in being a concerned citizen, which is what I am. And I'm just sorry that we don't have that going on in society. But anyway, happy anniversary. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, and thank you for your ongoing interest in us as an organization in providing a better service for the public. Any other comments?
And we did have one online comment that was provided to you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to our consent agenda, which includes approval of minutes and an exception to UTA policy.
I move that we approve the consent agenda the minutes and the exception to the UTA policy.
I second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion to that end? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next is our agency report. We'll go to our Executive Director, Carolyn Gannott. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning. Just two items. First, I'll just let you know, Jaron Robertson will be up here earlier, but to just remind people, we are doing a launch of the microtransit pilot project on November 21st, tomorrow at 3 p.m. at Draper Station. So we're hoping the public will come out and others will, just to see this launch of this new sort of innovative potential solution for pretty much getting around in some areas, as well as first mile and last mile to our core system. Next item, I want to let Bob Biles talk. About 2 weeks ago, we did do the reissuance of our bond and refunding, restructuring, and a new issuance, and so Bob will just give you an update on that.
Thank you. As you remember, in September, you authorized $540 million of debt to take care of potentially 3 restructuring, refinancing options, as well as 1 new money option. The designated officers eventually approved $309,710,000 of bonds and did 2 of the refunding restructurings in the new money issue. On the 2012 5% refunding, we had $14.7 million of net present value savings, and that was a little bit over 15% net present value savings. We did the 2015 restructure, and we knew that was one that was going to cost us a little bit. And you might remember the week before we did the actual sale, that cost was up to $9 million. We ended up a little bit over $3 million cost to achieve that $10 million a year savings in debt service in our 2027 through 2036 years. And so that was about a 2.44% cost. And then the new money issue, the ones that we never really talked about a whole lot, but that's the Fund the 5-Year Capital Plan. The true interest cost on that was 2.73%. And so we declined to do the 2012 4% refunding because it didn't meet our standards for the net present value savings. I just want to thank everyone for all their work, the financial advisor, the underwriters, bond counsel, legal staff, all did a great job to respond quickly to the needs as things change fairly quickly.
Bob, and I know you've got to have been watching the market since then. Have you had this moment like, gee, we should have done it this day, or do you feel like you hit the best, we hit the best?
Well, you know, the day or two right after it went up 15 basis points would have resulted in $6 million less savings from those bond issues. So I haven't looked at it since then. You know, never look back, right?
Yeah. I thought maybe glass just validate. But anyway, thank you for your work there.
I should say one other thing. Yeah, we haven't given up on the 2012 4% bond refunding. We'll continue to watch the markets. And if that comes into the money, it takes a little while to restart the engine, and we'd probably have to go back and incur some additional issuance cost. So it's got a little bit greater hurdle now because it would be done independently.
And that concludes my agency report.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda for contracts, disbursements, and grants. And first item up is item A, contract for auto body and collision repair with Advanced Auto Body and Valley Collision. And with the upcoming weather, we may end up needing them more than we have the last few months.
Good morning. This is a 5-year contract with Advanced Auto Body and Valley Collision in the amount of $520,000. Vehicles covered under this contract include UTA's White Fleet, Vanpool rideshare leased vehicles, and third-party claimants against UTA's insurance. This 5-year contract with Advanced Auto Body and Valley Collision is $104,000 annually, bringing the total 5-year contract amount to $520,000. Contract pricing is based upon a discount for labor and parts. Contract totals are based on historical repair expenditures and our budget allotment. This was a best value procurement and UTA's evaluation committee deemed it advantageous to award the contract to two vendors based on shop sizes and UTA's potential needs. Work will be divided between the shops based upon each vendor's current workload and at the discretion of each of the project managers. Any questions on this contract?
The one question I had, Eddie, as I read through it, is the 104,000 collectively between the two, or does each one have 104,000?
No, it's between the two.
Okay.
And so really what it comes down to is I wouldn't think that one shop would have the capacity to be able to take on our workload in a timely manner. And so we split it out to two different vendors.
Okay.
to be
But
able to-
our limit on this is up to that amount.
Up to $520,000. And that's just going back and looking at historical charges over the years of what we've paid.
Sure.
So this is, we pay them 104,000 regardless of how much we send?
No, sir. This is,
It is billed up to that amount then?
this is a not to exceed amount, so we'll pay
Okay,
for
what
actual.
happens if we have to exceed that amount because of the repairs that are required? What do we do then?
We would need to come back to the board for a change order.
Okay. So this is up to that amount per year, and anything in excess of that, then we get to see again.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
That was partly my question. I was just thinking of it in the reverse. If for some reason we don't hit that benchmark, does that still, like, let's say we spend 95,000 or something, does that mean you have to spend 104? How does that work?
No, it's just not to an exceed amount.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If none, I'd entertain a motion on this contract.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract of the auto body and collision repair with Advanced Auto Body and Valley Collision as presented.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eddie. The next item up is employee holiday gift cards and with Harmon's, and looks like it just under the wire.
Yeah. Just in time, right?
Yeah.
Morning. So this is for a one-time purchase. We did go out for bid on this with multiple grocery stores along the Wasatch Frontier. This was put out as an IFB, so the lowest bidder won the bid, and this is how we've done it over the prior years as well. This is something the executive team has done over a number of years that I've been here. And Harmon's was the low bidder on this one this year again. They've won it several years in a row, actually. And so this was for 2,900 gift cards at a value of $125 each for all of UTA's employees. And so we would be able to pick those up and have those distributed prior to the Thanksgiving holiday if this is approved today.
And Harmon's is a great local store and obviously do a great job. Do you get multiple offers? I mean, do you feel like this is a competitive process?
We do. We typically get Harmon's, Winco, Smith's, Kroger, Associated Foods.
Okay.
Those are
So there's some
typical
options
ones.
that
Yeah, absolutely.
process.
The major players do bid on this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Questions, however, on this item? If none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the contract with Harmon's for the employee holiday gift cards.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item up is a change order on our advertising contract extension with R&R Partners. Andrea, good morning.
Good morning, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present this today. UTA has used an advertising agency of record for quite some time, predating my tenure here. We last procured this contract in 2015, and it was a contract of 4.5 years. The reason for the 4.5 years is so that we could align the contract going forward with our budget calendar year. So I know that's an unusual term in the contract. It did include up to three one-year options, and we are requesting a one-year extension of that contract, exercising the first of those three options. The new contract would expire on December 31st of 2020, and we would prepare to go out for a full procurement probably in the summer of next year. So with that, that is our request for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think you answered actually my first question, which was, you're looking at potentially an 8-year contract, and they certainly have done a fine job, and it's not a statement, but I also know that's a very competitive industry, and I just wondered about the timing and length of without going back out again.
Yeah, correct. It was 4.5 years as we looked just kind of strategically with the new leadership and the changes in the organization this year. And then we have a lot of major initiatives that we've done in retooling some of our communications and several things that are carrying over until next year. We wanted to continue that momentum and exercise the one-year option.
Okay. Questions? Other questions? Okay. If there aren't any, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the one-year extension for the advertising contract with R&R Partners.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next item up is a change order with the Depot District Tech Center Phase 2 with Big D Construction. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning.
And I see you brought Gray along with
Yeah,
you.
he could answer any of your
Okay.
tough questions. So this is for a change order for Phase 2 contract with Big D. They're the ones doing the Depot District right behind us. So their contract, there's two phases of their contract. Phase 1 is pre-construction and Phase 2 is the construction contract. And the contractor has divided construction into 6 phases. So you don't get confused what phases we're talking about. The first phase was they knocked down the demolition and the hazardous materials removal, which they're almost done with. And then this amendment, or this change order is for their Phase 2, and that's going to include the wash building, the fueling island, the west parking lot, and temporary paving of the east parking lot. And then they'll have additional phases after this, so.
How close are you at this point to being on budget as you go forward? I know that's always the...
We're working on that. As we're redesigning the building, since we decided to tear it down and we're redesigning. As you are aware, we had some design meetings this week, and we still have some things that we need to get down within budget. So we're still working in the design to include those and trying to balance the needs versus the wants and getting that to fit within the budget. We're still working on that. So this, however, is, I want to say is a given that the wash building and the fueling island has always stayed the same. And so this is really not part of it. It's not, this is within budget. And so it's the other, the maintenance building, the canopies, that type of thing that we're still working to get within budget.
And do you feel like you're still on track time-wise? Or?
Time-wise, we are delayed because of the design. We are also experiencing some delays with obtaining the necessary permits, and so we are working through that right now. The original schedule was 3 years to build it. It takes 3 months to tear it down and 3 years to build it back up. But we're looking at some innovative technologies to build it with the tilt-up concrete panel walls and that type of thing. So, but we're still, depending on when we actually get the design drawings and the building permits, then we can get a better handle on the schedule.
Okay.
When are they anticipating, I'm sorry, Beth, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
When are they anticipating finishing the demolition back there?
So we are, excuse me, we're waiting to take that last bit of wall down. As soon as we move the new fire riser into the part of the breezeway that's going to be staying. And so
Okay.
we've had to go through several testing with the city to get the line chlorinated, get it checked, make sure there's no leaks. We have our final chlorination test being done today, and so we are hoping that that passes today and that we can get the final approval tomorrow to turn the fire line back on. Currently, our fire suppression has been turned off, and so we've actually had a fire watch here within FLHQ 24 hours a day over the last week to week and a half. And so we can hopefully stop that tomorrow, and then as soon as we get the fire suppression turned back on to the new fire riser, then we can tear down that building. So we're looking at probably the beginning of next week when we'll knock down that final wall, as well as tear out half of the breezeway. If you notice, the breezeway has a saw cut all the way around. We've gone through and have saw cut the building, so we just can take that away.
Did somebody run a string through it or something to make sure it actually?
Exactly.
It's not like me when I cut a piece of plywood and I have like a half inch that I missed.
We cut it, and then we made sure there weren't any wires or pipes that we cut in the process of that. So,
I had a quick question, Gray. Like, what when you're talking with the permits and everything else, how do you anticipate that that's going to come shortly, or are there still some issues that they have?
we're still working on some issues that we feel like we've resolved the issues, but we need to sit down with the building department at the city and make sure we've got all those issues resolved. It was last week they had 28 pages of comments, and so, which is normal. We've gone through and addressed all those comments, and so we just need to make sure that they're okay with those comments.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Mary, anything else or?
Nope.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion on this change order.
I move that we approve the change order for the Depot District Phase 2.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Good luck. Next up is a sub-recipient grant for vehicle purchase with Turn Community Services. Eddie?
I have Ryan Taylor with me this morning.
Morning,
Hoping
Ryan.
to answer any questions. As you know, UTA administers FTA Fund to St. George. This funding will be used to purchase one 24-foot cutaway bus and 4 wheelchair accessible vans for a total of 5 vehicles. And all 5 of these vehicles will be used in the Wasatch Front area. This agreement is a federal requirement to execute FTA 5310 grant funding. Vehicles will be funded with 80% federal funding and a 20% local match provided by the subrecipient. These vehicles will be purchased using existing UTA contracts, the state contract, or through the request for proposal process. UTA will perform the procurement of the vehicles to ensure compliance with federal procurement regulations and will place a lien on the titles to ensure that UTA maintains continuing control of these assets. Any questions?
I did have a question on the actual ownership of the vehicles. When, I assume they're procured through UTA. Do they stay in UTA's ownership because of the federal funds, or do they actually title transfer to Turn? And you have to do. There you go.
One time.
Thank you. So the agency, so in this case, Turn, they will be titled in them, but we will have a lien on those titles until the federal lifespan is complete. And then we also follow up, they have to basically use them until they have less than $5,000 worth of value, and then they can dispose of them how they would like to.
Or keep them, I guess.
Or keep them. Most of them keep them and drive them until they're no longer usable.
And then after that value gets achieved, do we just remove our lien?
We remove the lien and they hold the title.
Okay.
Yep.
And then do we have any liability on them, or they have to cover all?
No, they cover all of the insurance and liability for those vehicles.
Okay. Other questions?
And I'm just,
Go ahead.
Beth, go ahead.
I was just curious how they, so Turn Community Services actually identifies the needs for all of these vehicles, and then they put that out there accordingly. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep, they use them for their operations. We do require them to use our software to manage their vehicles so that we have visibility of how many trips they're making and making sure they're due all their preventative maintenance, et cetera.
Who is the subrecipient?
So the subrecipient, so we are the recipient of the FTA funds, and the subrecipient are all of the grantees that receive those funds through us. So in this case, it's TURN is the
TURN.
subrecipient.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Yeah.
It's a great service. It would be hard for these. The old department I managed administered federal grants. It's hard for a lot of these nonprofits to know how to navigate some of that work. So thank you for your staff's effort there. If seeing no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve this recipient grant agreement.
I'd make a motion that we approve the sub-recipient grant agreement, FTA Section 5310, for the grant vehicle purchases for the TURN Community Services.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item up is a pre-procurement item.
Morning. We just have one pre-procurement this week. It is for bus stop real-time digital signs. This procurement is part of a CMAQ grant with a UTA match to install digital signage with real-time bus departure information at intermodal hubs in Salt Lake, Davis, and Weaver counties. UTA is asking for proposals to provide outdoor electronic information signs, networking equipment, and installation. This will be procured using an RFP procurement with technical selection criteria in addition to price. I've asked Marcy Almer to accompany me to answer any additional detailed questions you may have on that product.
One question I had is, is it anticipated that these would be somewhat versatile in the sense that if we wanted to, do intermediate information or even at some point advertising, that the signs would have that, or are they anticipated to be very rigid in their sort of nature to only list times?
At this point, we're looking at putting very similar signs to what we use on front runner and tracks to provide just departure information for customers. Some of them may have capabilities that these signs don't have because they're going to be a little larger. So we may be able to push out other messages instead of just a 2-line sign. Most of them are bigger multi-line signs. So we would have some capability, but I don't know that advertising would be something we could do on them.
The only reason when I used to oversee Mountain America Expo Center, sometimes you get into digital signing and without leaving yourself some variability, you sort of regret it 2 or 3 years later. You sort of had this archaic monument to only being able to convey one kind of message, and even adding graphics to it. And so it'll be interesting to see as you go through that process. I would hope that you'd have a lot of flexibility in the design, but maybe it has to be that way because of the environment or other consequence. But the way digital signage has gone, it seems like you'd want to basically have a clean slate that you could redesign however things transpired or signage standards change. So just some things to think about.
Yeah, that's certainly something that could be part of the proposal. They can propose certain options.
Yeah.
Can I just ask another question? I'm sorry, you looked like you were going to be ready to say something else, so go ahead.
One of the reasons we've selected signs that are what we currently use is they have about a 10 to 12 year lifespan, whereas some of the flashier LCD signs that are capable of more advertising have about a 3-year lifespan to 5 years. We have more like 10 to 12 year warranty money, not 3-year replacement money. So,
Thank you. That was very helpful. I had a question on: is this are these bus stops already predetermined? Because I guess one of the requirements would be to have at least electrical to the bus stop. And how did you determine that, if that's, or is that part of this? I wasn't sure. And then how, I guess roughly how many bus stops would be getting this type of digital signage?
Currently, we've chosen,
You have to push, you don't have to hold it down, just press it and then, there you go.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Currently, we've selected intermodal hub locations that are just lacking in all signage for buses, where we have existing facilities and we can work with our own property as a pilot. If we choose to go out and do further bus stops in random locations, we're going to have to partner with municipalities or businesses to get power there or explore solar options. Where we haven't used this technology in these locations before, we wanted to make sure everything would work well before we roll it out into the wild. We do have a partnership with the University of Utah. They have recently redesigned their bus loop, and we're going to be adding digital signage there. And they went ahead and laid conduit and are going to provide power and fiber for us to use the sign. So at that location, once we figure out the software to make those signs work that we can have off our network, this could go anywhere. So.
That's great, thank you.
Jen, did you have a question? Okay. Any others? All right. Well, it'll be exciting to see what gets proposed, and thanks for answering our questions. That brings us down to some discussions on, and also service and fare approvals. And our first item up is a sponsored fare agreement with the city of Farmington. So, Monica, welcome and good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. So we are here today to first talk about a sponsored fare agreement. This is the Ogden Business Unit, and it is for Farmington City. This is one of 3 contracts that we have. We're just bringing the first one to you today. We'll bring the other 2 during the next board meeting. The amount, so this is for Route 667. We're not collecting fare from riders on this route because it is a sponsored fare. The contract is for $72,000. It is calculated by recovering revenue for 25% of the operating costs. Typically, we do use ridership estimates for sponsored fare, but in this instance, this contract is unique because it's not for a specific number of days. This is actually for the entire year. So our board policy and our proposed UTA fare policy does reference sponsored fare contracts. Prior to this being in place, there was no reference to sponsored fare contracts, but our upcoming SOP will help guide the method in which we price these across the entire agency, and that is not in place right now. So I do recommend that we go ahead and approve this contract for the $72,000. Any questions on this one?
I do, but go ahead, Beth.
I had a question more along the lines of the sponsored fare portion. So as I understand it, there's also a sponsored fare program very similar to Farmington City with Layton City and then with Ogden, which just opened. And is that's part of what you're trying to address with the SOPs moving forward, right? I know this one's coming up right now, but.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Does this route 667 just service Lagoon from the front runner station? What's the route that we're talking about here?
So the route services Station Park, the front runner station there,
right?
Lagoon, and downtown Farmington.
Okay. What kind of ridership has been experienced, say, this last year?
About 75,000 annual riders.
Okay.
does the bulk of that come during the season for Lagoon, I'm assuming?
So, yeah, Lagoon drives a majority of that ridership, and most of the riders on this route are transferring to and from Front Runner or our bus routes 470 and 455. So those customers, it would be fair to say that about half of the trips on this route have already paid a fare.
And I noticed that the original sort of combination was just doing some kind of estimation. Does this actually collect more revenue, same revenue? You switch your sort of calculation method, if I understood it right.
Yeah, I haven't ran an analysis on that, but we could take a look at it and see.
I mean, I'm assuming the sort of 25% is our own fare box recovery, and that's.
It is higher than that, that's correct. Well, the 25% is more than we're getting, but I could definitely run those numbers and do a comparison for you.
Just was more curious then. Okay. Any other questions on this? No. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on this sponsored fare agreement.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the sponsored fare agreement amendment with Farmington City Corporation for the Lagoon Station Park Shuttle, Route 667.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Andreas.
And the next item then would be our ski bus agreements, and we brought a ski discussion to you. The follow-up step was to come back and get approval for all of these contracts. We don't have Ogden today. We will bring Ogden back during the next board meeting that we have, but for now, we're seeking approval for all of these ski resorts listed above, and the estimated revenue on that is $539,000.
Any additional questions?
Just a quick question. Are we looking still at December 1st or is it Thanksgiving weekend? Where are we at on the start?
The contract is dated for December 1st. I know Ogden is in the middle of December.
Right now, we're looking at starting service on November 29th.
Okay.
So we kind of have a long-standing agreement, kind of a verbal agreement that when 3 of the 4 are open, then we'll be ready to go. We work closely with the ski resorts, and what we heard last week was that everybody's planning right now to open on the 29th.
This is probably a good week for them to
be planning. Yeah.
This is a good week to make snow.
Yeah, so that's good. All right. Any other questions, however? None. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on these agreements.
I move that we approve this ski bus agreements for the various resorts that have been listed.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thanks, Monica, for your work there. And that brings us down to a fair contract with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yes, we are back. We're here to renew this one again. Seems like just yesterday that we were actually renewing it. So they're a great long-standing partner. They have been for years and years and years. They provide passes for all of their full-time employees. We've got about $1.7 million in contract value. And with your approval, we will move forward with renewing it.
Any questions on the contract? If none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the fair contract with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I believe that covers about 6,000, a little over 6,000 full-time employees.
That's correct. They have 6,000, a little more or less than 6,000 passes. So.
And I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. That brings us down to our Beth and my old employer, Signage Bank Corporation.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, you
Although
did
I
not.
wasn't a pass holder at the time, so.
Yes, that is an opt-in program, but you did not see it last year. It was a 2-year contract. It was easier for them to do a 2-year, and so That was implemented before you arrived, but it's here today. It is a one-year contract. They do have their employees opt in, and it's $430,000 in revenue. We have a lot of employees use their service. They offer our monthly pass at $89 to their employees. So with your approval, we'll renew this contract as well.
Monica, you said that it was a 2-year contract, which is why we didn't see it last year, and now this is a year. Is it going to become annual every year now, or how did that work?
It's still to be determined, but because we are looking at fair pricing as a whole, the overall agency, we did request to keep it a year. We also don't have other partners that are on longer than a year. So until we work out those details, we decided to go with a year.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion on this fair contract.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the fair contract with Zions Bank Corporation for the EcoPass.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And you get to stay around for the discussion.
I do. So this was convenient that all my items are just one after another. And as a final item, then today, I'd like to speak to you a little bit about the draft UTA Fairs policy. So I have 3 main things that I'll touch on during this presentation. The first is going to be to review some of the initiatives within the Fairs Department, just so that I can show you where today's discussion fits in. And then second, I'd like to summarize a few key elements of the draft policy. And then last, I have a few policy considerations to go over with you, and those are only related to the pricing structure. So looking at our work plan with the draft UTA Fair policy, it's been, looking at just this overall work plan that we've had with all of you, we have had the UTA Fair policy as a top priority ever since we passed the board policy in August. So our focus then today is on the draft UTA Fair policy. Now we are looking at Resolution 2011-2018. Both of those should be updated based on some of the decisions and the criteria in the UTA Fair policy. It will guide the decisions for the pricing. And then we have the low income program. I will be back in a few more weeks to request approval for a pilot. And then last, we have our fair collection strategy. We collect fares by making a variety of fair collection equipment available and purchase payments. So we need a future strategy with our fare boxes, ticket vending machines, and electronic fare readers to help us set and achieve cost of collection goals. So part of this effort was to redo the cost of collection, and I will be back with those numbers as well because that is finalized. So looking today then at the fair policy, I do want to summarize a couple of things for you and make a couple of points. This is a completed draft and it still needs review and feedback, so it has not been circulated yet for review. And the UTA policy approval process is that we get feedback and approval from the key directors and those involved with the policy itself, and that has not been performed yet. So it consists of 7 sections, and I'll go over them in the next slide, again relating to pricing and payment, which are the key components of a fair structure or a fair system. And the policy itself references new SOPs. I was not able to get everything into the draft policy, but there are several references to SOPs that need to be created or updated. And there are targets within the report that we can within the policy that we can focus on, some annual reporting, some analysis that would take place before some of our decisions. And so you'll notice several references throughout the policy to those. And then it does require additional decisions to be made, and I want you to know that I do recognize that. It does have draft language, and although it's draft language, doesn't mean it's a final direction that we're heading, because it's obviously subject to your approval and our discussion, but it did need content, and so I did populate it with content, and it's a great place that we can start to consolidate all of our current UTA policies. So these are the sections. Again, you can see we're talking about adjustments, discounts, free fares, special pricing, comp passes, payment, media, and validation and enforcement. But for purposes of our discussion today, and we don't have a ton of time, I want to narrow in just on the fair pricing structure. I'll show you some ideas of some changes that we could make based on this fair policy. And if you feel like we're heading in the right direction based on our discussion today, then we can begin additional vetting and work our way to approval of the policy. So this is our current pricing structure. I just wanted to remind you, I took the pricing table on the resolution and consolidated it down to this. I think it's a little bit more presentable. But if you remember from our prior, some of our prior presentations, the fare structure is complicated because of the combination of our pricing, our product types, discounts, modes of service, and media. It's the combination of all of those. So what I'm sharing with you today, it doesn't take into account fare media and our complicated fare poster. So there would still be work that we could do around that. That's not accounted for here today in my example. But our front runner, here's our front runner pricing table. The top table's for regular fare pricing and the bottom is for reduced fare. And this simply shows you how much it would cost to travel between stations, which in our instance is a flat 60 cents. And this calls the pricing out. But you can see that there's a lot of numbers up there. And then we have a few fare promotions. We have the group pass. We have our youth pass, which is called our rider's license during the summer. We still are maintaining a discount on our fare pay card. And then we have our Horizon monthly pass for our Medicaid holders. So I want to summarize a couple of things around our pricing structure. It's centered around a base fare rate. So the language that you'll see in the pricing structure always references a base fare rate, of which will be decided upon by all of you, and that's currently $2.50. So the policy does reference the ability to charge a premium fare. So if we decide as an agency, and we do have a premium fare charge now, that yes, we want to charge for the additional cost to run the service, for the additional longer distances, or for, say, additional amenities, then we do have that option currently within the policy that we would be able to charge for that. We have pricing relationships established in the policy. These relationships allow us to dictate what that premium fare would be or what the fare product pricing would be. We also have transfer language. So transfers are something that we'll have to address as an agency, and I will reference those a little bit later, but it's important to note on the transfers I did include a transfer time window. Whether we decide in the future that that's something we want to apply to electronic only, then we can talk more about that. But transfers for the purposes of my example today isn't necessarily something that we will go over in detail. The ability to vary fare rates is within this pricing section. I know that I've heard interest in things like capping or either monthly or time of day pricing, maybe taking some advantage of our midday capacity and being able to vary our fare rates in any type of way that is included in the fare policy language. Like I mentioned earlier, SOP for oversight and implementation. Pricing in this instance could be adopted through resolution. So if you want the pricing, or if it makes sense legally for the pricing to be within the policy, that's fine. The pricing table is not in the policy right now. We would go ahead and update the current resolution, replace that with the pricing table, which is not in the actual policy right now. And then the new resolution would replace the old one. So the final section then, looking at policy considerations, one would be our front runner fare structure. And we would, I want to, let me just back up just a little bit, because I want to make sure that I show you an example now of how this fare language then would translate into a new pricing structure. I just want to clarify, I'm not asking you to approve these ideas today, but encourage discussion around these examples so that we can make sure that we're headed in the right direction. But also, I want to make it clear that we haven't done financial analysis over these examples. This would be a separate section. The policy does state that if we do a fare adjustment, we will go in and do a pricing proposal and analysis. And so that would be separate outside of here. There has not been a financial analysis to understand the impact or revenue. And then also note that future fare variations right now are not available because the technology is not there, but that doesn't mean that if we decide to do some of that in our pricing structure that we cannot get the technology there. So this, in essence, as I share with you these examples, would be things that we could implement in a later phase if we're looking right now to still develop technology, because that would take time. So with that said, we have our front runner fare structure, and a decision should be made on how to treat this structure. And the next slide, I'm going to show you some pricing options that we could consider as part of the front runner fare structure. Combining rates. So as I mentioned earlier, right now we have separate rates for premium fare and regular fare, but the premium fare, we have separate rates on ski and express. So it is possible for us to combine these into one rate. Transfers. I mentioned transfers earlier. I'm going to skip over that one. Discounted products, or discontinued products. So part of this simplification will require us to get rid of some products, which I think will help us simplify. For example, in this example, we would consider eliminating tokens, paper punch passes, and the monthly pass upgrade. Multipliers, we would use multipliers. I want to give you an example of those, and I'll speak to the day pass a little bit later, but the day pass in the fare policy right now would use a multiplier of 2. And with that multiplier, it would allow us to eliminate the round trip pass, and that would simplify our fare structure. And I'll show you what some other agencies are doing with multipliers. And then last would be the youth discount. So rather than having a 25% discount, which we have right now for the youth, and then a 50% for the seniors and disabled, we could combine those potentially. And I've got a little bit of research that I'll share so you can see what other agencies are doing on the youth discount. So first, we can keep the status quo on our front runner pricing, right? That's $2.50 plus 60 cents. Another option, simplify the status quo, bring that down to 50 cents. I mean, one way that's simplifying is helping people do the math easier. We can break it into 3 zones. We have a kind of a natural break at a 3-zone area, and other agencies with commuter rail lines do utilize the same zone pricing. There's the option to use a flat fare, right? One rate, it's a very simple option. Or last, we can vary pricing from station to station. And an example on that might be from Provo to Vineyard would be $2.50, but Provo to Salt Lake might be $4.75. So it's not an exact 60 cents per station, but we could vary that by station. And also one thing to know on the status quo is that we do have Vineyard Station coming into play. So another reason we have to keep front runner in mind is because when that comes into play, if that's another 60 cents, then those going from Provo to Salt Lake are now being charged an additional 60 cents. But we also have North Temple where we're not charging a fare, so we still have an exception there. And it's all these exceptions, like the zero fare at the North Temple station instead of 60 cents, that keeps complicating things. So those are some options on front runner. Let me show you what it would look like if we did move to 3 zones. So here is our rail station now. The purple example here is, or hot pink, I don't know, is front runner. Here could be a break in zones. If we did do 3, and then what pricing would look like if you go from Provo to Draper, $2.50, Provo to Salt Lake, $5. As soon as you cross 3 zones, Provo to Ogden, you're at $7.50. And, you know, these price points and these zones could be broken down whatever we wanted them to be. This is just for illustrative purposes, and we could break them down into whatever makes sense. Or if we're looking here at some type of a flat fare that we implement, whatever price point, again, makes sense, then the entire line would be set at $5. $5 keeping in line with a premium rate and not being a separate fare. So I want to speak a little bit to the youth discount and what some of our peer agencies are offering. You can see that RTD in Denver is doing 70%. So they're the most aggressive right now, and they allow that up to age 19. Other agencies are also doing 50%, but what varies for them is the age. Metro allows up through 12 years old. So when you hit 13 years old, you no longer get the 50% discount. But we can decide for our agency what makes sense, but 50% is not an unusual discount to offer the youth. Day pass, so I want to share some agency data on day passes as well. Like I mentioned, our multiplier is 2.5 times, it's $6.25. We don't sell a lot of these passes. People opt to purchase the round trip, and that is an extra fare product in our structure. But we're also seeing agencies like TriMet and RTD that are going to a 2-time multiplier rate. And they're doing that because they've done a good job of simplifying their fare structure. Now, VTA has valued it at higher, and they're 3 times. So I think they're around $750. DART at 2.4, and then Metro at 2.5. So if more research makes sense, I'm happy to pull in more research, but we do have a variety of multipliers here with the day pass.
Those greedy people at VTA.
So proposed multipliers then in the example I'll show you, the day will be 2 times, the monthly pass will be 32 times. Note that the monthly pass, that would be dropping what we have it now. So right now on regular service, our monthly pass is 33.5 times. That's not the same as premium. Premium is 36 times, and premium is 36 times at $550, which puts you to the $198 monthly pass price. But in this example, I dropped it to 32. This assumes a rider would take our service 4 times a week, for 4 weeks, and 2 journeys a day to get there and back twice. And then a premium rate, if we did want a premium rate, it would be 2 times. So here's the example that I want to show you. This is what our fair policy, draft fair policy language can translate into, is something simple where we have adult and reduced. Reduced is senior, disabled, and youth. It's a 50% discount. We have 3 products. You can get a single trip, a day pass, or a monthly pass. To $50, and then $5, and then $80 on the monthly pass, and that's the multiplier at 32. Again, not recognizing the impact to revenue, although this will have an impact. And then looking at Express and Ski, I don't have Front Runner in that category, but if we did go to a flat rate, Front Runner would be part of that Express bus and Ski bus rate. I do have to be determined on Front Runner and have kept it outside of this matrix for now. But we can simplify the fare structure. It is possible. And this is a way that we could make it clean by discontinuing some items, combining some discounts, and this does exclude Fair Media aside from getting rid of tokens in this instance, because one of the products I showed you on the previous table earlier did include 10 packs of tokens being sold. So this then concludes my presentation. I'm open to your feedback, and I am anxious to hear your ideas. If you are supportive of the path that we're taking based on what you've seen in this presentation, then I can return to you with a summary of more policy considerations, and I can go into a little bit more detail on some different areas of our policy, and then we can work to get that finalized internally with our UTA folks and approved by all of you. Thank you.
So just to conclude as well, and actually we can put up any slides you want to put back up to discuss, but we did try to simplify. We got to 6, Ken, not 5. But we did keep paratransit still at $4 at this point, but we haven't done any financial analysis on these activities. But it mostly talks about you can adjust the multipliers if needed. We could take a look at this, but I think it's a much more simplified system for us to go forward. And then, as Monica said, some of the ways we price our passes and things we could do, this would all flow out of this activity.
I just had a quick clarification question for myself. So when we talk about the fare structure that you have right there, the reduced includes seniors, disabled, and youth. Does it also have any parameters for low income? Is that included in that, or is that?
So the special pricing, so a couple of things. Special pricing then would go into a low income program, which would not be addressed right here.
Thanks for the clarification.
I like it a lot. I think we're definitely going down the right path here. A couple questions that I had, and endlessly, my years of service for Salt Lake City, the notion was, if I just need to go 2 bus stops to go pick up groceries and come back to my apartment, why should I have to pay $5 or $2.50 or whatever that is. And so there's sort of a disincentive now. There's passes, and, you know, I know the city has talked about the pass options. And I hate to get into a more complicated, but there's a few places, and I even wondered, you know, I don't know if anybody would ever utter these words, but if you went into an agreement with them to eliminate the free fare zone, and then, but, you know, could do it, sort of I don't know, an urban price setting. Downtown Ogden may become something similar, maybe even downtown Provo. I don't think that you'd have a lot of places, but they're just places where, you know, they become sort of urban centers. Would that be more effective, or is the free fare zone the more effective way to do that? I don't know that question. And I don't know that we've really sort of had that discussion, and I wouldn't want to hold this piece up, but I would want to keep it in mind as you went forward, if there's a way to think about that differently.
One way you do it is that your fare payment, if it's electronic, and even, or if you have a transfer, allows for 2 hours on a one-way, so you could come back within those 2 hours. If you're taking longer, it would cost the additional for round trip. That's one way. I know certain agencies have dealt with it.
Yeah, and I think another way we talk about fare variations would be if we're looking to make utilization of the extra capacity we have during the day, and you don't need to grocery shop, you know, during peak commuter times, and we could get, you know, half price fare implemented midday, or even, you know, 25% off, something like that with an electronic card, then I think this is where a fare variation would make sense, is because we can make, you know, extra use of that space and get those individuals taking trips when the fares are a little bit lower priced and they're not interfering with our high rush hour.
So I mean, obviously that's a complicated conversation, but I just think as we go forward, if there's something along that line, it would be good to somehow deal with that. Because I had a developer come in and meet with me who's doing stuff down on and looking at opening up or helping to facilitate the opening up of the track station there just south of 6 South. And they wanted to be included in the free fare zone, and I said to them, well, where does it stop? You know, and when you know, what's the difference between that and the next stop that the city's redevelopment agency, you know, paid to put in there at 9th South and 2nd West. And so I just think as those urban cores continue to grow, and as you go up 4 South and those kind of things, it would be interesting to figure out something that could facilitate sort of that urban circulation that would, you know, hopefully get them a pass. And whether it's even something that if they're using electronic fare media or required to, you know, they'd get a benefit of, like you do when you get on the metro, you go 2 stops and it's different than if you go 10 stops. And I don't know whether we want to get into that or not, but I wouldn't want to do it with change, and I wouldn't want to do it with cash. And, you know, I think somebody'd have to go down that road. But anyway, think about that.
Yeah, I had a chance, I ran across, I had a conversation with him as well at another meeting, and he kind of told me what you talked about, and we were talking about some special pricing opportunities and working with developers and things like that. And I think that we can definitely come up with a good solution, whether it is something we price specially under, you know, set parameters, or whether we are looking to expand or, you know, expand the free fare zone in this instance. But he did seem open to some ideas.
Then the next question is probably more to Kent and I, because he rides it every day. I was intrigued by the zone version of the front runner, and going within the zone seemed like a logical and sort of fair kind of way to think about it. But I don't know. You ride that every day, Kent. Do you have any sense of that?
Well, one of the things that I thought about was if on front runner, if you just have separate zones rather than a base fare and so much for every additional stop, have a base fare and then so much for each additional zone. So that that way you don't have,
That's what you had on this one slide, right?
That's how I understood that this was, correct?
It's sort of like you're saying, and yeah, if you go from zone 1 to 2, it's an additional, 250.
it's an additional whatever it is.
I think it's how we phrase it in our wording,
Yes.
because all of this, how we communicate that, but
Well, I like that approach as opposed to the way it is now, where we've got additional for every additional stop. That way, somebody can, within a zone, knows exactly how much more they're going to be paying.
Right, so one of the things we could look at, because as Monica mentioned, we didn't do the financial analysis, but a big portion of this, looking at where the trips come and go. And we
Right.
and we have that primarily mostly, at least in a sense of it. We could take a look at what it is, is there a group that would unfairly change, or where should the zone be?
Right.
But we could do a little bit of analysis versus what we're doing now. And see, I don't want to, I want to make sure we're at least somewhat cost neutral.
Sure.
Right.
Bob will fall
right.
over. So,
Well,
if
same
not
for you.
better. And so that would be one of the things. This would also revolve around the base fare as well. So if you change the base fare,
Then the
things would
structure.
change as
Then
well.
then it changes.
Right, and that's sort of where
Yeah.
we're at right now.
I like that. I think that in order for us to really kind of understand the maximum value, to keep that as a quasi net neutral in terms of revenue, it would be really good for us to understand where are people coming, where are they going. And so I think we
Right.
probably definitely want to have a deeper dive into the front runner portion of that, irregardless of whether we keep the base fare the same or not.
yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, we have all of our TVM data that shows where they get on, get off. Now, half of the revenue then is going to be for contracts, right? Which would not, with the contract chain, and the other half of that is the public fare and the way you get the ticket through that. We wouldn't have it on our monthly pass holders, although we don't have a lot of monthly pass holders on the premium pass, but we also have fare pay data, and that will show tap on and tap off. And our TVMs ask, where do you get on and where are you getting off? So we have a lot of data, and we can run those numbers. We've looked at some numbers already, not in relation to zones, but just to understand how far are people going, and are they at 450 and less or higher, and we're happy to do more analysis for you on that.
Thanks. I like where you've gone with this.
Thank you.
I think this is a
Yeah,
great start to do.
this is much simpler. This is headed in the right direction for sure.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Not to beat the dead horse, but I was thinking about that urban zone. Come up with a much better name, but I just wonder if there's even a pass that somebody buys. It's an incremental value of that, because this really is a short trip type of user, that although it still taxes our system, it's not the long commuter distant user. And I just, it would facilitate somebody, they'd have to pay if they went outside of the zone, but if all they were doing is moving around in that zone, it would facilitate that for them. I don't know.
I think, it's interesting. I like the terminology that Monica used, which is fare variation. It's not part of the base fare structure.
Right.
We could take a look at that as as we move forward and how our tap on, tap off. I don't think our tap on, tap off on a bus gives us location.
Yeah, it does.
So if it does, we could take a look at that.
Yeah.
Maybe we could integrate that into a fare variation, which is if it's less than so far, then the return trip is not, or whatever. So we'd have to just take a look at that. It's a lot more use of technology. It is really geared towards the use of the electronic fare media, probably more than on a cash basis.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair expectation. I mean, because even in a low income environment, I would say 90% of the folks have some kind of electronic means, these days. And so, anyway, I don't think it would be there would be a small segment, but I don't think it's an unfair direction to go. So, other feedback that you're looking for that we haven't spoken to?
So yeah, no, if you feel like we're on the, if it would be helpful, then I'm happy to come back for an additional session and bring some front runner, a little bit more data analysis and cover a couple more points with you on special pricing, and a few other things on fair media to make sure that we're on track. And then I can go ahead and set up a few meetings with our senior leadership team and some of the executives and start vetting the actual wording and other considerations. So if those sound okay as a next step, then I will continue to work on those.
And I guess as part of that vetting, you'll look at the financial analysis.
Yeah, so what we can do,
to see if we're reasonable.
I can definitely do a financial analysis. I think if we're using a multiplier and we're saying the base fair rate, what will happen is we talk about in the policy a fair adjustment. So we can get this policy approved and go do whatever fair adjustment we need, but when we do a fair adjustment, which would be changing the multiplier to 30, then we actually pull out a full analysis for every fair adjustment we do.
I see.
And say, okay, how is revenue going to drop? How's it going to change? So we can start a preliminary one with this, but this will help us decide, I think, on, it'll hopefully guide the path that we're taking for the updated fair structure, which these would be two separate initiatives.
So
this pricing example right here would be in the updated resolution and not the fair policy.
So we have the multipliers right now is, I would like to, maybe if you could, a little bit of feedback on the day pass multiplier, which is 2 times, because you saw what other agencies had done.
I can run those numbers, yeah.
But also, and then we have 32 for the multiplier.
What do you want to show
the
your
monthly pass? Yeah,
again?
this is our proposed multipliers, but we will run the financial, if we need to come back and tweak it, we'll come back, but right now we're looking at, those are our proposed multipliers for the rates. So the premium would be twice as much as the base.
I didn't see any concerns there.
No,
Can I just ask a question that just seems to strike me, and maybe this is very rudimentary, but why is a monthly at 32 and not 31?
So that's
just, if you wouldn't mind kind of defining that, because I'm good with this overall. I just want.
It's 32 trips, and people usually take 2 trips in a given day.
So it's 16, so it's 4 days a week, for assuming 4 weeks.
Not based on number of
We
days.
currently have it at rough 33.5?
Yeah.
Is what it is today. We'll take a look to see, we might need to come back and change that to 34
I'll
or
run it.
something on the
Yeah.
numbers, but that's what we'll be taking a look at. And we can do this analysis in-house. But once we do the base structure, the fair table, there will be a needed outreach process to the public and a Title VI, whatever, to adopt anything.
Which is also called out in the fair adjustment process, doing that outreach, the Title VI.
And the one way is you could set sort of your multipliers and everything, and the base rate and the policy, and then no matter what, we have to go back out. And then you could then change the base rate, or that could be all done separately and referenced differently. So we'll work as to how you want to put something into whether it's a resolution or not. Monica mentioned that earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your work on it, and we're definitely heading down a good direction there. Item B is our South Salt Lake County microtransit pilot launch. And I know, Jaren, you're here, and I list Andrea. I don't know if anybody else is joining you. I just want you to know that I signed up for my VIA app today, and they do not pick me up in Rose Park.
Actually, that's good to hear. Good morning, trustees. This is a very exciting week for UTA, our customers, and the communities of Southern Salt Lake County. We are launching our microtransit pilot, and actually, let me get the presentation started. This is the opportunity for us to go out and test and pilot and demonstrate new and emerging technologies for us to look how we can improve service as an agency. We're one of a handful of agencies really across the country doing this type of service to see if this is the future of services that we can go out and offer. So it's exciting, and I'm really happy to be here this morning. Really, for purpose of today, I will quickly give you an overview of what the pilot is about, but I really wanted to get the opportunity to talk about the service itself. Andrea is here to talk about our marketing and promotions plans, and then really answer any questions you may have. So quickly, as a reminder, this is a 12-month pilot for us to demonstrate these microtransit services. We're really testing this as a first and last mile solution in the area, and really as a community service. So is this actually a viable transportation solution if you're not even connecting into fixed route transit services? And just a reminder, it's a pilot, so a one-year service for us to have the option to be nimble, make adjustments, and try to make sure the service works. At the end of the pilot, we'll have to make some decisions on what the future of it looks like. Our goals and objectives with this pilot are to really increase geographic coverage. We're looking for operational efficiencies within the agency, and we want to provide a better customer experience. Additionally, as the work that Laura Hansen and the planning team is doing, we want to make sure this aligns with the service choices project she's working on. As a quick reminder, we're not discontinuing any routes or service within the area. We'll run this service on top of all existing service UTA has in the valley. Our budget for this is coming from Salt County fourth quarter that we just started receiving this year. We are spending just a little over $2.1 million on the operations, and then we have $350,000 allocated to marketing, which is a good, healthy marketing budget, and Andrea can speak to that. And finally, to make sure we know if this project is successful or not, we have a pretty extensive evaluation plan. Both with the work that we've done internally, we've also partnered with WSP and Brigham Young University to support the evaluation of this pilot, really to make sure we have good standard qualitative data to understand how the service works, but also make sure we have good quantitative data too, as we look to see is the public and the communities accepting these types of services. So it's really important over the next year that as we conclude this pilot, that we have a good, solid understanding of how the service works and if it meets our objectives. As part of that, we'll plan to come back to the board on a quarterly basis to give you updates on the performance of the pilot. Quickly, just going back to the service area, we've talked about this several times. Some of the great features of this is we have 7 connections into our rail system within that service area. That's the blue area you see on that map. The northern boundary is 114 south and then continues south through the county. One other quick update on the map. As we moved towards launch on this, we worked pretty extensively with VIA and made some adjustments on the northeastern boundary, which before ended on Redwood Road, and we've adjusted that further east to about 700 east, and that really allowed us to incorporate South Jordan Frontrunner Station and a lot of businesses and entertainment areas that we believed would be viable to the success of this pilot. Quickly, as a reminder, this is a public-private partnership with VIA. VIA is a leader in on-demand shared transportation solutions, so we're really excited to be working with them. They have a variety of partnerships and pilots both across the country and the world. Some notable ones would be they partnered with transit agencies in Los Angeles and Seattle. They partnered with cities in Arlington, Texas, and I'm spacing the other one. Arlington, Texas, and trustees. New York and Chicago, and then Washington, D.C. are services they're providing on their own. And then also with VIA, they're a transportation as a service solution. So they're running the service for us. They're doing the hiring of operators. They've brought in the vehicles. They're really managing the day-to-day operations. And they're also providing the technology that we're using as part of this pilot. So really what I wanted to talk to you today about is really the customer experience and how the service works. We've mirrored our operating days and hours of the FlexRoute services in the Valley. So we will be operating Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the service. We put an emphasis on shared rides, so a customer should expect that they will be picking somebody up along the way and potentially drop them off if those trips match. and may deviate small distances as part of that trip. This is a corner-to-corner service for most customers, as we should know. And what that means is for a variety of reasons, when it comes to safety, for operational efficiencies, and for other passengers who are on that vehicle, we may require a customer to walk a short distance to meet the vehicle. That could be a couple hundred feet, just to make sure that the vehicle isn't making large deviations to meet those customers. We set up a maximum walking distance of a quarter mile. In relation, that's probably about two city blocks in the downtown corridor. But that would be the max. We should just expect a few hundred feet a customer can have to walk to meet the vehicle. For any individual who may require a wheelchair accessible vehicle or our paratransit eligible customers, we will be able to drop them off door to door. So there isn't a walking requirement for them. And then we also look parameters on what's the average pickup time. So we set, again, those parameters on how long customers should wait for the vehicle to arrive. And we should see on average during the course of the pilot around 15 minutes. So, I mean, that's really great service when you look at what we're doing on some of our other core routes. So we're excited about that. Talking about the mobile phone app, again, VIA is providing that software and technology system for us. It's available on both iOS and Android. And through that, our customers have the ability to make trip requests and payments. They'll be able to do the vehicle tracking and notifications, and it will tell the customer where to meet the vehicle and where they'll be dropped off at. And also through that mobile app, we'll be able to collect customer feedback and some pretty standard type qualitative data through that. We've talked about fares and we'll talk a little bit more on promotions, but as a reminder, we're using standard UTA fares that are transferable to our other modes and services during the course of the pilot. And then as far as customer service goes, this is a joint effort between VIA and UTA. Through the mobile app, customers will have the ability to call in, and this will go to VIA to make a request if they don't. I should back up. They would have a request. They have the ability to connect with VIA for customer service issues and problems or feedback that they may have. If a customer did not have a mobile phone, they can call into VIA and both make a trip request and a fare payment. They do provide PCI compliant services as part of that. Again, our customers would also be able to call into our customer service department, and we have the ability to both request rides for them and give them information regarding the service.
Great, thank you. So with this, we have a very aggressive and multifaceted marketing and communications effort. It has been truly a joint effort with VIA, and they have been tremendous partners in lending their expertise, what they have learned in other markets where they have rolled this out. And so a lot of efforts have kind of trickled out over the last few days as the vehicles were moved to the Draper station last Friday. So we started some little social media teasers. We did have our first vehicle sighting this morning with one of the vans at a Harmon store out in the area. So things are rolling, and we're really excited about that. So the service did start today, even though our celebratory event is tomorrow. So generally speaking, how we've coordinated the marketing and communications is our efforts have been focused on building general broad awareness among our customer base and the local community in that service area, and also building on community support. The cities who are in this pilot service area are very enthusiastic. They've been great partners, and knowing that other communities and cities may be interested in that, it's strategically important on UTA's part to build that community support. So kind of the tactics we've been focusing on are some traditional media, like with some of the local Valley Journal newspapers that are out in these communities. There will be advertisements placed in them. We will have a lot of on-system information at our platforms, especially the rail platforms that are in the pilot service area. We will do some direct mail out-of-home marketing. We are reserving that until January just because of the holiday season, and it's not always the best time. With regard to some new media, we are doing a lot of geo-targeted mobile and digital advertisements, and they look very much like what you see here And I think some of the materials that you've already seen. So this is kind of the consistent look for the campaign. VIA is complementing those efforts, and they are focusing more on rider acquisition, rider engagement, and really focusing on the rider. So they have a program, they call it the Street Ambassadors. So over the course of the next 10 weeks, they will have ambassadors out at our rail stations in the pilot area and at key locations within the community, just really doing that one-on-one outreach with people who may be, potential users of this system and hey, have you tried this out? And they are also doing a lot of digital marketing and advertising, primarily on social media. And so the bulk of the marketing efforts will be kind of in the first 3 or 4 months of this program. We have reserved some contingency in the budget to tweak and tailor some things and do some additional efforts continuing on into next year until the end of the pilot. So we're all learning a lot along the way, and so we've got a good, robust plan, but also the ability to be a little bit flexible. And following up on our last presentation to you regarding promotions, we are launching an initial promotion of all rides are $1 through December 31st of this year. But there are a variety of promotional codes out there on some of these materials where new riders to the system can also get their first 2 rides for free. And that will continue. Currently, we'll be monitoring the data and the usage, but we anticipate continuing that promotion for at least the first 90 days. And so those are some of our efforts that are just kind of kicking off today. And happy to answer any questions.
Well, I am really excited, and I pulled it up, while you were talking, and one of the things that I noticed is I had used the VIA app in New York City, and the VIA app there, it just comes, it's black with a little symbol of VIA, and that's it. But when you pull it up here, it says VIA and UTA right there, which I appreciate your efforts at really getting that co-branding done. So I think that that's really, really helpful. So thank you. I appreciate it.
This is truly a co-branding effort. So it's been a good process for us and a good process for VIA, and we're carrying that effort throughout all of our communications.
Is the Draper front runner station kind of home base circulating around that at all, or is there such a thing as kind of a home base for this?
So we've utilized the Draper front runner station for vehicle storage overnight.
Okay.
So that's where the drivers will go to pick up the vehicles when they work a shift. It's not necessarily home based. It is in the service area. As drivers go out and work the service during the day, the app will use smart technology to strategically locate them throughout the service area if there's downtime. So they won't necessarily, if they're waiting for a trip request, the app's going to look at usage and demand based upon history and say, where should we best leave that vehicle in relation to where it is right now, to minimize expenses throughout the course of the day.
All right.
I would also like to highlight too, one thing is that you talked about the New York experiences. We also went out, which you wouldn't have seen in New York, is we've made our rail stations as primary and highlighted locations within the service area. So if you zoom in, you're going to see all of our rail stations as popular destinations that you can click on, and it would take you right there if it's either a pickup or a drop-off location.
So when you say rail, you mean tracks as well, right?
Tracks and front runner.
Wow,
correct.
that's great. I think that's really
Yeah, that's the, what, 7?
7, correct.
7 stations.
2 front runner stations, and we have 5 track stations.
Right.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. The only thing is I can't be there tomorrow. I'm so disappointed. I'm gonna talk about money in another location, but I can do some budget work. But I know that I have other communities, certainly in Davis and Weber, that are really looking at this to see if there is some potential to do some type of a service similar to this that can really help enhance our services out there. So I'm excited.
Well, this will be exciting to see how this turns out, and thanks for your efforts, and we'll be interested in some of the early results and how it's going after a few weeks. But thank you so much for your work. We'll look forward to being there tomorrow. So.
Thank you. Could I quickly also just
Sure.
note, we've been formally working on this project for a year. Informally, we've probably been evaluating and looking at microtransit over the past several years. But this was a really collaborative effort across this entire organization. It just wasn't one department who came and put this project together. We really have a great staff who's all come together to support this project, and we couldn't have done it without great people here at UTA. So, thank you.
Very well said. Thanks, Jaron. I would just note as we get into other business, Jim Barker, who's our lobbyist, sent a text message to me, which is why I was looking at my phone. Senator Romney's office has notified us that we got a $3.2 million FTA grant for bus and bus facilities grant. So I don't know if that rings a bell to anybody, but that's good news. And we're always grateful for those partnerships with the FTA, and I'm sure we'll get better details in the future. With that, I think that's the conclusion of our business, and it brings us a note that our next meeting will be on, we'll skip a week because of Thanksgiving, and then meet again on December the 4th at 9 a.m. With that, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.